Hey, hello and welcome. My name is Daniel, and I am a co-host of the Actual Anarchy podcast and the Last Nighters. And we also do a couple of shows called Anarchy in Action. Normally, my co-host is Robert, and he is not able to be with us today, but I have a special treat. We're going to dive into the crypto world once again and get into some more advanced topics on this Anarchy in Action. We have two of the writers for the site as guests. A returning guest is Stephen Clyde. He helped us do a video called Crypto 101, and that can be found at actualanarchy.com/crypto101. This episode will live at actualanarchy.com/crypto102. So we're going to get into some of the more advanced topics, and we'll do a little quick, 5-minute summary type overview of just crypto in general. Maybe have a couple of clarifications based on the further discovery and learning since we made that first video, and then we're going to kind of pass it off to Kirk D, who is the writer for the site as well, and he's going to get into some of the more advanced topics, and I'm just going to sit back and let the two crypto guys kind of go at it here. So first off, let's introduce Stephen Clyde of the Actual Anarchy site, and also about to launch the Peace and Liberty podcast, and then our other guest is Kirk D, a writer for the site, and you can find both of their writings and other things listed at the show notes page below, which will be at actualanarchy.com/crypto102. How you doing, Stephen?
Hey, Dan. How's it going? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, no problem. And where can people find your new podcast that you're about to launch? You got a website or a way to get to it, just so that we can refer people to that, because you're about to launch it, and it looks like it's going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm going to launch my website sooner rather than later, but you can go to YouTube and just type in the Peace and Liberty podcast. You can find me that way. You can find me on Facebook. You can just type in Peace and Liberty podcast, find me there. If you want to donate to me, I'm on Patreon and GoFundMe. So pretty much it's just everything / the Peace and Liberty podcast, and you'll find me. I'm on Twitter. So yeah, just reach out to me and you can find me. The Peace and Liberty podcast is going to launch this Monday, March 5th. It's going to be Monday through Friday. And I've already got 3 weeks booked, so I mean, I already have some amazing episodes coming up that are already recorded. So yeah, be on the lookout.
All right, sounds ambitious. Very excited about that. And our other guest is Kirk D. He's a writer for the site, and you can find his writings at actualanarchy.com/KirkD. And Kirk, do you have any other Twitters or websites or anything that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. Kirk DeSoto is the handle. And Facebook also, and also for about the last 6 months or so, 4, 5, 6 months, something like that, I've been doing some work with a friend of mine who started a cryptocurrency forum, and we're kind of expanding it, not just making it only a forum, but also adding news, video interviews, content, whatnot. So. And our focus has been really trying to help new people who are coming into this space to be able to, get into cryptocurrency, learn how to use exchanges, understand the basics of, what cryptocurrency is, how it all works. And so we're really just trying to be an educational platform for new people that are entering this space. And
right,
you can find us there at Cryptorum is the website. I got a T-shirt here. You can see it.
All right, Cryptorum. Is that a .com?
Yeah, .com.
Okay, awesome. Cryptorum.com, and we will list that down below. Thanks. So before we get into this, Stephen, do you want to give us just let's call it a 3-minute summary and that update that we talked about regarding the Crypto 101 video that we did, and then we'll get into this with Kirk here. I think we're having some technical difficulties, Stephen. We cannot hear you. All right, real professional show here. I'll cut out this little bit. He must have changed the settings somewhere.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, and regarding how you're set up, do you have an inline mic in your headphones, or
Yeah,
are you talking into the?
I'm just talking into this mic here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It sounds just a little bit muffled, but we can still hear you, so that's fine.
I could try to bring it up a little closer, maybe.
All right, Stephen, can we hear you? I can see you. Oh, there's the little ding. All right, can we hear you now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
It sounds like shit. It's like way too turned up.
All right, how are we sounding now?
Much better.
All right, sorry about that. I have no idea what happened. Are you able to edit that out?
Yeah, I'm gonna edit it out, but let's do like a little signal that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna edit right here, everyone. Us. I'm gonna cut this part. All right. And let's go to Stephen. Stephen, give us a quick little summary on crypto, just a couple of minutes, and then whatever that update was that you had with, additional learning and other such things, and then we'll move over to Kirk.
Yeah, so I got into crypto about January 2017. I had a friend at the time he was buying Bitcoin at like $400 a Bitcoin. I was just completely out of the loop. I didn't want to understand it, and like many people, they just refused to understand it. So I'm going to give a little bit of background about crypto because I'm not assuming that everybody knows about crypto. So October 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto, he wrote the white paper, which basically you can find it online. It basically just outlines what Bitcoin is, what the purpose of it is. In January 2009, he launched the first open source Bitcoin client. He actually mined the first like 1.8 million Bitcoin. So I mean, he theoretically has like $20 billion because a lot of it's unspent. But point being, he mined the first 50 Bitcoins, and that was called the Genesis block. And in the Genesis block, he wrote this: The Times, January 3rd, 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailouts for banks. So he's talking about, this is after the financial crisis, he's talking about banking and the problems with it. And the white paper, he outlines the problems with central banking. So the point of Bitcoin is that you don't have a third party, essentially. Like, the third party is the whole network, which reinforces the stability of everything. So back when we did that presentation, Dan, that was we did that August 1st, 2017. And I don't want to make you guys cry, but the Bitcoin price at that time was $2,000, $2,703.89. And look at it now. I mean, it obviously went up to 20K. It's a little over 11K right now. So man, it just multiplied in price. So related to Bitcoin, about what Bitcoin is, it operates on an open ledger system where the miners, their graphics cards and CPUs basically do math operations that solve the problems and add the transactions to the ledger. They get paid transaction fees, so that's the purpose for doing it. This all relates back to cryptography. So in 1976, Whitfield Diffie and Morton Hellman put out a paper called Multi-User Cryptographic Techniques. And the idea is that you have a private and public key. So this is kind of complicated for a lot of people to understand, but think about it this way. If you have a mailbox and you put a letter in it, and you have a bunch of people putting a letter in it, that's the same thing as encryption, because you're putting a letter in, nobody can go in and take the letters back out except for the mail person who has the mail key, and that's the private key. So the idea is everybody has a public key and everybody has a private key, but you can never spend your coins unless you have that private key. So hopefully that's a simple analogy for people to understand. And some people would say, okay, you have this private key, but how safe is that really? Well, let's put it this way. To crack a private key by hand, it would take 204 tresvagentillion years. So that's basically 10 to the 72,204th power in years. Impossible, right? I mean, the Earth is only a few billion years old, as we can tell, so it's not going to happen. So that's a brief overview of what crypto is. The idea is that you don't have a third party overseeing it. You can't really attack the system because you would need 51% of the computing power that's generating the mining power to be part of some fraudulent attack, and that's impossible. You have so many millions of people interacting at once that it wouldn't matter what one miner is doing. It wouldn't matter if he had a big mining setup. He's not going to be able to be 51% and promote the attack. So that's a brief overview. My views have definitely evolved on Bitcoin since I started. Obviously, I'm an economics major, so I think about this stuff all the time. I think back then, I would have been more keen to argue that that Bitcoin is money. Now, what I'm going to argue now is essentially what Bob Murphy would argue, is that Bitcoin is undeniably a currency, and that it's a medium of exchange. People accept it, but money is classified in very different, in a specific way. It has characteristics, and one characteristic that it's missing is acceptability. You can't use Bitcoin in most places right now. So theoretically, Bitcoin could become money, or any cryptocurrency could become money, but the way I see it, I feel more comfortable calling it a currency versus money. So that's my intro, and that hopefully gives people an idea of cryptocurrency if you have no idea what it is.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And Kirk, I know I shared with you the Crypto 101 video that we did, so let's just assume that we're jumping off from that point, and anyone who's interested in viewing that, do go to actualanarchy.com/crypto101, and you can see that, and then feel free to come back to this one, which will live at 102. So Kirk, go ahead and take it away, my man.
Okay, so I think I'll just start by kind of giving my basic story about how I got interested in crypto, because everybody has their story, right? I don't remember. I can't specify a particular, memory of when I first learned about Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure it was before 2013, but I can't pinpoint the exact date. But I do remember I had a friend of mine who, he was more into it than I was before anyway, but it was in 2013 that he was pushing me to get involved in it. And at the time, I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know anything about it really. But I went ahead and said, okay, I'll try to do a little bit more research. And so I went ahead and I actually checked my old emails, and I discovered that I had actually signed up for Coinbase back in 2013. Back then it was like trading around $400, something like that. But at the time I didn't have any money, and like I said, I just really didn't understand it well enough to actually throw money at it, because regardless, $400 is $400, and especially if you don't have a lot of money, $400 is a lot of money. So I'm like, why would I spend something, that I consider value at the time for something that I don't even understand what it is, and, it could be a scam, I don't know. So I didn't really do anything with it at the time. And then about 2 years go by, and my friend was kind of talking to me again about it, and he said, hey, you should really get into this now. It's really becoming more prevalent. And of course, I had heard about, when Mount Gox, the whole Mount Gox hack and all that. So a lot of people thought Bitcoin's dead, and of course, it wasn't dead. It came right back, but and that's a whole other story. But every time that Bitcoin has died, it's come back that much stronger. So it never actually dies, which is pretty amazing. But so about 2016, I finally said, okay, I'm going to take a more serious look at it. So I started doing some more research, some more reading, watching videos, whatnot, and started to get kind of an idea of, okay, I don't fully understand the technological aspect of it, but it does seem kind of interesting. And so I finally waited. I probably researched it a good 4 to 5, 6 months before I finally pulled the trigger and said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and invest in this. And so I'm looking at Bitcoin. This is about October of 2016. I'm looking at Bitcoin. I'm thinking, well, $1,100, $1,200, $1,000. That's kind of high. But they got this other one, Ethereum. It's ranging between like $8 and $12. So I'm like, that's a little bit more reasonable in terms of, bang for your buck. That was my mindset at the time, of course. So I said, okay, so I'll just throw a little bit of money at this Ethereum. So I would just throw a little bit of money here and there, maybe every month, up until probably December. So really, I didn't throw a ton of money at it, in the grand spectrum. But, at the time, my average buy-in with Ethereum was about $10, basically. And, as you know, where Ethereum is right now, it's a heck of a lot more valuable than that now. And so, but just leading up to that, you could see the change, the growth, the excitement within the community, within the, speculative pricing. And it was just, it was a really cool atmosphere, I thought. And then I started looking at other cryptocurrencies. I started trading for other ones, just trying to experiment to see what was good, what I liked. Even though there's plenty of things about certain cryptocurrencies that maybe I'm not as crazy about, I try to look at it from an investor's perspective also, and so just trying to think about, if I invest in this, do I really think it's going to do anything? Or if I invest in something else, is this going to be better long term or short term? So there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. So for me, it was partially coming from, an investment standpoint, but also, as you start learning and reading more about Bitcoin and the whole ecosystem, a lot of the people behind it, a lot of the people that support it, come from libertarian backgrounds, come from, kind of anarchist backgrounds, where it's like, hey, we don't need a government fiat currency to determine, what we can spend our money on or how we can trade goods and services. This is really about a revolution in commerce, and being able to transact with, peer-to-peer without having to go through all those channels and, getting permission. And, if you want to travel overseas, well, if you have more than $10,000, now you're on a terrorist watch list, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, if this is my money, I should be able to do whatever I want with it, right?
Right.
But clearly it's not my money, right? When we look at the Federal Reserve note, it's their money, we're leasing it. But so that's kind of what started me on the journey, and then I just, as I saw the price rise, I got more and more excited about it, and really just started delving deeper and deeper, trying to understand how the whole thing works. And I'm by no means an expert, but I do try to keep up on the relevant news of what's going on, and I try to understand it from a deeper perspective, because obviously I've been interested in economics for years, and just, I know you mentioned the book Creature of Jekyll Island quite a bit. That's a great book, great intro for people to learn, kind of origins of where we're at now, and I think why we're seeing these other systems come about, because, we can see the failure of what they created. And it's not just, it's a success for them, but it's a failure for all of us. And, for me, I just want something that works. I want something that I can actually have a store of value with, that's not going to depreciate every single year. And if I was to, throw money in the bank account, Federal Reserve notes in my bank account, and save it for 20 years, I will be effectively losing money day after day. I would be losing value day after day over that 20-year period.
Yeah,
Whereas
that
if I were to
inflation
put,
tax.
exactly. Whereas if I put that money into something else that appreciates, right? And if you look at cryptocurrencies charts, I mean, it's insane. It's straight appreciation. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to last forever. We don't know. But I think a lot of the excitement around it is very telling of what type of monetary system people want, and this whole idea of competing currencies. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm about. I'm about competing currencies. I don't necessarily believe that there's one best currency. I think that there's multiple different currencies that could work, and as long as they have a particular set of structure of rules that people can agree on and that works, and those rules aren't violated. And the reason why the dollar is falling is because the rules keep changing, and confidence will be lost. You know, if I'm told that, well, if I just work hard and I save my money in the bank, and eventually I'll be able to retire and survive and whatever, but then I do all that, and then I see my retirement slowly diminish. You know, when I'm old enough to where I can no longer work anymore, I can't generate any new income. That's a problem, you know. And especially the younger people, they don't want to see their future being just completely decimated by the current system. So a lot of younger people are getting into this because they see the potential, and just, you know, I mean, you have so many other wonderful aspects, like, you know, these trustless ledger systems where I don't have to trust a bank to, you know, either hold my money, or if I want to move it overseas, right? I don't have to do that. I could just, you know, put it in a wallet, go overseas. You know, when I get there, I open my wallet back up, and there's my how much ever money. You know, say it's $1 million. There it is, right? And no one is the wiser. And that in itself, to me, is priceless. So that's just kind of where I got started with it. Like I said, about the last 6 months or so, I've been working with a friend of mine a little bit, basically helping run a cryptocurrency forum, Cryptorum. And we're basically, like I said, trying to educate new people, because it's a steep learning curve right now for a lot of people, because a lot of this stuff is still very tech focused. And, you know, it's not as easy sometimes as just, you know, turning on an app and you know, making a purchase or transferring to somewhere else or whatever. It's getting there, but, you know, for a lot of the new people coming in, you know, they're talking about, like, well, if I want to buy into an ICO, you know, what do I got to do? Oh, well, you know, you can't send from an exchange, so you got to go open up an ERC20 wallet token, and then you got to provide a certain amount of, you know, gas limit and gas price, and you got to make sure that you verify the transaction on the blockchain and make sure it went through, and then you got to, you know, so when you start talking about this to people, they're just, you know, you get the deer in the headlights stare, and they don't even know what you're talking about. So we're getting there in terms of the easeability and usability of it, but we're not there obviously yet. But to me, I think we're really still in the initial, we're still really in the early adopter phase of this whole thing yet. You know, if you look at the overall market cap of the entire crypto market, you know, we're just under 500 billion. You know, if you look at the total market cap of gold, right, it's between 7 to 8 billion, depending on who you talk to. I'm sorry, trillion. And so, you know, we're not even up to the precious metals market. So this has a lot of room to grow. And so when a lot of people make these what sound like wild predictions in terms of price points, when you factor in the overall market cap for that particular market, it's actually not that far-fetched. So that's just my little spiel.
No, that's great. And let's assume that people who are watching and listening to this are familiar with the history that we presented in Crypto 101, and talk about what your site does. Is it more directed towards people who are interested in how to functionally use it, how to purchase it, how to do an ICO, and how to spend money if they desire to spend it? Or are you also covering, like, how to set up a mining rig and become a miner and any other aspects? Or is it more kind of open-ended up on Cryptorum?
So it's a little more open-ended. I would say the bulk of our material tends to focus on kind of newbies coming into the space because there's a lot. If you just look at the metrics, I mean, Coinbase announced recently that they were adding 100,000 new users a day. And I guarantee the majority of those people have no clue what they're doing. If you look at Binance, is another big crypto exchange, they announced that they were adding, on average, like 250,000 new users a day. That's insane. Most of the exchanges basically had to freeze new users because they were just so overwhelmed. And that's a lot of the issues that we get. People on the forum are saying, oh, I did this transaction on this particular exchange and it's been sitting there for, days or whatever. What do I do? I've, messaged the exchange, and, I just kind of have to say, well, look, I don't work for the exchange, but I can tell you, just mathematically speaking, most of these exchanges don't have more, and the big ones might have anywhere from 100 to 200 employees working for them, right? And you got to figure if they're getting 250,000 new users a day, and 10% of those decide that they're going to submit a trouble ticket, right? How much time is it going to take those, let's say, 100 employees to answer 25,000 trouble tickets? And then the problem becomes too is, and I hear this in the forums, I hear this in the Twitter and everywhere else. Oh, I submitted like 10 trouble tickets and still no response. Well, a lot of times they're submitting the exact same trouble ticket, right? So now you're just adding that much more of a delay on everybody because now the exchanges just can't handle that amount.
Well,
and now they got to wade through all all the same ones and like weed out, which one have we already answered, or so it's a mess.
Yeah, I'll jump in here and I'll give some of my experiences. I used to trade on a site called Poloniex, and it wouldn't surprise me if to this day Poloniex has the highest volume still. But I remember I was trading a coin. It was called XBT, and I don't even know if that coin still exists. A lot of coins just disappear. But basically what happened is I got F'd twice because there was a big pump and there was a DDoS. And during the DDoS, you can't access your coin, like everybody's trying to sell off. And by the time the DDoS is over, guess where the price is? You've lost all your gains. That happened to me twice.
Right.
For me, as a free market individual, I never use Poloniex again.
Right.
So I think a lot of the problems you're talking about, like the site can't get to their tickets or their system makes it so it has repeat tickets, they're eventually going to go out of business per se, so to speak. So I think the market will take care of a lot of this, but like we're talking about with this, it's all so new. You ask 9 out of 10 people, you ask them what is crypto, what is Bitcoin. I have talked to people, they said they have never heard of it. There's people that are like, I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. Then there's people who are like, I have never heard of it. Like, you don't watch the news, you don't look at articles, like you've never seen the word Bitcoin. So it really is that early of a stage. And you're talking about how the gold market cap is like in the trillions. Well, yeah, I mean, the crypto market's only captured, last time I checked, it was about like 0.01% of the whole market share. The whole market share.
Yeah.
And just imagine if we get to 1% of the market share, how much crypto would grow. I mean, it's just almost hard to fathom. So, yeah, I mean, I'm really, really excited for the future. Personally, basically what happened in January, China was trying to ban, I think they banned ICOs. They're trying to ban miners. And banning miners, by the way, that's essentially saying that you're not allowed to have your computer plugged into the wall using your graphics card to process transactions. That's essentially what it is. And you can't really stop that. You can ban it, but unless you're going into everybody's house, it's like people are still going to do it. So there's a huge mess. If you look at the charts, I think it was like December 18th or something, it capped at like about 20K, and until like a few weeks ago, it just dropped. It dropped in half. So there was a big scare. Everybody thought like this is the end. But like you mentioned earlier, Kirk, like these ups and downs have happened like 30 plus times.
Right.
Like you look at it, it's like people thought it's the end like 30 plus times.
Right.
So I knew that was happening. I was just kind of sitting around. There was probably like 2 months. I didn't even check my Bittrex. I didn't check any exchanges. I just sat back and cashed out like a few weeks ago. I'm actually out of crypto right now. I need to get back in, but I think now is a good time to get back in because who knows if it'll go back to like 6K again. Not likely. I think, but who knows if another country that is very involved in crypto tries to ban something again, it's going to do the same thing again, but the stuff's going to recover. The government's gonna want their take, and they're gonna unban it.
Yeah, yeah, and and we're talking about lows, right? I actually basically predicted this. I wrote about it on the forum, but because I've been staring at these markets for the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just watch what it does. I watch how the news affects the price. I watch, just as new money comes in, how the market changes a little bit. And, I noticed some patterns, right? And that's partly why I kind of predicted where the low was going to be. And this was like probably, I don't know, a couple weeks before it actually hit its last low. And it's up now a little bit, right? But, yeah, like I said, when you kind of understand, I guess, the dynamics of this market, who's coming in, what people are doing, then you can kind of start to sort of predict a little bit what the prices are going to be, what it's going to do. And, but sometimes a lot of stuff can surprise you, right? Because like you mentioned, China, China, they effectively banned crypto back, when the price was still around, $6,000 or $6,500.
That was all very surprising too. I mean, that kind of was just like we woke up one day and China had banned a lot of stuff.
Right.
And it had an immediate. People immediately got scared. I mean, it's kind of obvious. If like you think things are going to crash, you're going to sell right now, and everybody's sold.
But what I like about the crypto market too is a lot of the people have different perspectives, I think, and you'll see the different kind of psychology as the markets start to change and grow. Because as we're all familiar with this term, hodl, right? Hold.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of the people that really believe in this, I mean, they're in for the long run.
Personally, I got to the point where I had to like shut everything off. I would be at the point where like I'd be out having dinner with somebody and I'm just like checking the charts. I cannot think about anything else. It could really, really consume your life.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
If you're a day trader, you have no life, and I did that for probably 6 months, and I made pretty good money. I'm not complaining, but it took up so much of my life that I could have read a lot of books. I could have done a lot more. So I try to balance that now. I check CoinMarketCap every day, but I don't sit there and watch charts every day. It's not healthy. because
true.
It's way too emotional. It's way too emotional of a sphere like you're talking about. Yeah. Most people do not know what they're doing, so. Yeah,
and a lot of people,
right now.
And a lot of people can't handle those swings. They really can't.
Oh, people sold their houses at 20K. Some people actually did that.
Yeah.
And God knows it. Hopefully they held on. If they held on, they didn't lose.
Right.
You only lose when you sell. If you sell at 10K, you've lost half your life savings, right?
Right.
So,
exactly. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, a lot of these people are coming from the traditional markets, right? Where if somebody breaks wind in a board meeting, the stock crashes to almost zero and it'll never recover, ever. And you're like, well, what happened? Oh, I don't know. Some guy broke wind. Like, and what else? I mean, did he do anything wrong? Did he, do something illegal? Well, no. Well, why didn't the thing come back? Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you can have, and I've seen this, I've watched it, you can have a 50% drop in Bitcoin for whatever reason. And that 50% drop can happen within 24 to 48 hours. We're talking huge swings And then within 2-3 days, a week, 2 weeks, the thing's back where it was or higher. And
yeah, so if you're a crypto investor and you have a lot of crypto and you're on an island for a vacation with no cell phone service, you could be pretty effed if you wake up 2 days later and you've lost all your value. It is touchy like that. Like, you either got to be in it full time or, just hold, just hold and just put it aside. Yeah.
And that's what I've learned is the best possible strategy is to research where you think the market is at in terms of lows and highs, and then just literally wait. And you got to be patient sometimes. You got to wait. Say, I'm not going to get into this particular coin until it gets to this particular amount. And then you wait. And most of the time, if you're right, it's going to go to that low, at which point, boom, you jump in, and then you just hold. And my overall strategy, what I tell most people now, and it's not investment advice, but it's like, hey, if you believe in this, you're going to buy it and you're going to hold it, because you know that where we're at right now is nowhere close to where we're going to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Like I mentioned earlier, when me and Dan did that presentation, Bitcoin was at less than $3,000.
Right.
From that point, it's almost 5 times what it is right now. Exactly. And the fact that it was almost 20K, it was almost 10 times what it was. Right. This was 6 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. The growth is incredible.
Damn it, Dan! I told you to buy some Bitcoin, man. You could have loaned me the money and I would have done it. No, I'm just kidding. But I want to bring Dan in on this because I know Dan back in the day had a lot of objections. Have you found more interest in crypto at all? Do you think one day you'll eventually buy some to put aside like you do gold? Or what are your big concerns 6 months later that you still see, Dan?
Well, you guys have both kind of mentioned a few of them. One is the nomenclature. It's a completely alien world to a lot of people who are jumping into this. And when they get excited about it, I think it's because they see the problems that are emanating from having a central bank and having a government-imposed fiat currency system that has not only the traditional tax that we're all about to pay next month, but the inflation tax and a host of other ways of government extracting value out of people. So it's only natural to want to find other ways and outlets to avoid that. And gold was legalized in the United States again in I think 1986, something like that. Bitcoin I consider a very interesting technology. I actually like the transactional powers of contract more so than the currency side of it. I like the idea of being able to have something essentially in escrow without having any particular third party be involved, but having it on the blockchain ledger. And then once the conditions are satisfied, then the payment or then the final transaction gets processed. And I think that is really, really helpful. Also, it makes transactions themselves. I mean, doing a wire transfer, you have to go through banks in New York. Pretty much every wire transfer in the world has to do that. It takes time. It takes a fair amount of money. So I like the idea that crypto is like a peer-to-peer decentralized network that has a fair amount of anonymity. I'm not even saying that right. I know it's not totally anonymous because it can be figured out who has participated in a transaction. But I still see some issues with it that make it not necessarily something I'm particularly interested in for myself, unless it's like a small percentage, like 5 or 10% of my income. Maybe I would throw in something like that and do a hold. Is that from Hold the Door from Game of Thrones? Hodor.
No, I'm surprised to hear you say that, Dan, because 6 months ago you were saying that I'll never ever buy, or I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you were saying you're not going to buy Bitcoin.
Well, and people can go back and watch the video. I might need to do it myself at actualanarchy.com/crypto101. Maybe I have come around a little bit in that I like anything that is competing currencies. Value is subjective. People are going to gravitate towards things that they think have value. I don't think that there's going to be this universal acceptance. I don't see it just yet. But I do like the idea of not having a top-down control mechanism that the government uses via central banks and fiat currency. And there's no question in my mind that the Federal Reserve is, in fact, more federal than Federal Express, because the board of directors and the charter are, in fact, controlled by the U.S. government. So people who say, oh, it's private bank, there's some private elements, but either way, it's there to fuck you over. That's what it's there for, and it's doing a great job.
It's private in that we can't audit it. We don't really know what they do behind the scenes, but it's all government mandated and stuff like that. But yeah, Dan, so back when we did the interview and people could watch, you asked the question that stumped me. You asked, so Bitcoin is in Satoshis, which is the 8 decimal places, and you asked me, what if the decimal point eventually become useless? And I didn't have an answer for you because I never did the math, but I did the math. Bitcoin would have to be $100 million per Bitcoin for there to be a need for extra decimals. And if there needed to be extra decimals, that could be solved with a hard fork. But Bitcoin's probably going to die by like 2040, 2050. Like all the money's going to move into another coin because of the cap supply. It's going to be eventually there's going to be no miners. If there's no miners, there's no transactions being processed. If it's not profitable to do that, the money's going to move out of it. There's a lot of coins right now where you can do transactions and receive it in about 3 seconds. If you do a Bitcoin transaction, and I do a lot of them because I trade a lot, if you're selling to someone, it takes about like 30 minutes sometimes, 30 minutes to an hour. So there's disadvantages to Bitcoin already in that it takes a long time. Every time I freaking move money off of Bittrex, I have to pay a $10 fee about right now, and I've paid more. So there are problems, but related to that one issue, I can clear that up. I can say that the decimal problem we shouldn't have to worry about.
Well, I think you're misunderstanding what my point was with the decimal problem. The point was that people will often point to there can only be 21 million Bitcoin.
Yep.
And my question is, well, if you essentially can go 8 decimals deep, then if your 8th decimal becomes a de facto unit of, say, the equivalent of $1, right? Then when you go 8 deep, you don't have 21 million units. You have 210 trillion units. And so essentially you have the same number of quote-unquote dollars in circulation as you do in the entire world right now. And so that was my point, that it's not a cap on inflation. My other critique is that, just like you said, there are hundreds or thousands of different coins out there. And so, yeah, there's a 21 million Bitcoin limit, and they just did a fork, so I don't know how that affects this. But there's Litecoin, and there's Ethereum, and there's 1,000 other coins. And so it's not just Bitcoin that's 21 million, it's however many other coins and whatever their limits are. And then it's this entire, what is presented as an anti-inflation thing, I don't see that. I don't see those things not contributing towards an inflation or being able to prevent one. So that's my critique of that.
That is a good point. I mean, I guess I would just argue that people were putting their actual money into this, so they are seeing some value in it, even if only subjectively, not based on any backed gold commodity or backed stock of commodities. But I think the market will take, I mean, you at least agree, and I think people like Peter Schiff would agree, of course the government shouldn't ban cryptocurrency, and we exactly want this. We want competing currencies, even if, we're getting into a digital age where I think a question right now is Bitcoin a digital commodity? But it's like, what is a digital commodity? What could we compare this to? This is something totally new. I don't know what to compare it to, so it seems like it's so new that, like, what would Murray Rothbard think about Bitcoin? I think he would probably be more in line with Schiff that, and like what you're saying, that it does seem like it doesn't solve inflation because you have so many units of this, even if it's capped. But I think Murray would still argue, like, yeah, this is such a crazy idea and new crazy idea that it's worth looking into. It's worth talking about. And I don't know. It's always like, well, what would Murray say? That's how I think about it.
Yeah, I think that might be an excellent question for, say, Walter Block. And you should get him on your show and ask him that exact question and see what he says.
I will reach out to him, yeah.
Yeah, I've got his email. I'll send it to you. You know, the one thing that really concerns me in this space is when I hear talk of not banning currencies by government, cryptos, but them participating in them and having their own. I've heard this is floating out there that they want to have a U.S. dollar equivalent or move people off of physical dollars. They're talking about banning or no longer printing the $100 bill in the United States. And just one point I want to make regarding that is back in 1964, when you still had silver content in your coins, in your coinage, the maximum currency amount was a $500 bill. And if you account for the inflation since then and the reduction in purchasing power, then the $100 bill that you hold in your hand today, back in 1965, would have been the equivalent of a $20 bill. So you have seen a reduction in the maximum value on a note in the United States go from $500 down to $20 in relative to 1965 prices. So I think that that's kind of an interesting thing. Typically, when we talk about inflations and hyperinflations, we talk about the zeros being added to the end, like in Weimar or in Zimbabwe, or about to be South Africa in the next couple of years, and probably in the U.S. eventually here. But I'm just going to throw this to Kirk. What do you think about the government being in the space themselves and trying to get people off of physical dollars, physical fiat currency, and moving into a digital currency where they can essentially, like in the movie In Time with Justin Timberlake, if they even suspect that you have done any wrongdoing, or not even that, if they just decide to, they can shut you off. So to you, Kirk.
Yeah, so, there's definitely been some talk about that, Fed coin, right? But I'm going to, so there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. If the government decides they want to create Fed coin, they're going to create Fed coin. There's nothing anybody can do about it. If the terms and conditions for that are, hey, this is the new fiat, you got to, trade in your $1 bills and get the equivalent of Fed coin, people are going to go do it. Because, well, what else are you going to do, right? I think this move to digital currency has been coming for a while now. And I think it would have come regardless of, if Bitcoin would have came around or not. And, I know some people have speculated that it's really, Bitcoin is just a secret government program designed to, get people interested, and then, they'll come in the back door and take over and all that. Well, number one, I've never seen any legitimate evidence of that, right? Number two, if that was the case and they actually did that, they went about it the dumbest way possible.
Well, to be fair, it is government. It is government. So. True. But continue.
But my point is, if you're going to get some, digital currency, and the idea is to put it out there where people are going to be, drawn to it so they get sucked into the system, right? You wouldn't do it in a decentralized way, right? Because the whole point of this entire argument, right, and it's what we've been talking about for years, is it's really at the heart of it, it's the difference between centralization versus decentralization. So if I was going to create a digital money that I was going to get everybody into, I would not create something where it could just run away from me and ruin everything I'm about to do. Kind of like the internet did, right? Maybe their intention was to develop the internet so that they could get us all using it, and then they're stealing our data, which they already are, right? But there's unintended consequences with that too, right? Now suddenly we have this renaissance of information that we have access to that we didn't for years, for decades, for maybe millennia. right? Suddenly we have direct access to this peer-to-peer in a peer-to-peer way where we can share information with one another, share ideas, congregate with people all over the world. You know, borders, geography no longer matters because I can have a Facebook chat or whoever, you know, whatever platform I want to use with somebody on the other side of the planet. We could talk about cryptocurrency. We could talk about how the Federal Reserve sucks, whatever, you know. That's a total game changer for the overall, you know, awareness and awakeness of society that, you know, if the internet didn't get where it was, would never have happened. And, you know, I've heard several people in government, even one of the Rockefellers say that, you know, it was a mistake to, you know, make the internet available to everybody. So they regret what they've done because now we're here exposing that they're the criminals, right? So if, you know, they were going to try the same thing with a currency, they went about it the dumbest possible way on planet Earth. And also, you know, like Stephen mentioned, right? Why would, if this guy had, you know, ties to government, bad ties to government, why would the premise of, you know, why he's releasing this be about, hey, the banker's about to get another bailout, you know, we need to do something about it. Well, here's a solution, right? So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I really don't believe, and I've never seen any compelling evidence suggest that this was anything but, you know, legitimate and really, you know, it's like this is the revolution, you know?
Yeah, I guess the real question here is, can government shut this down? And I'm going to say no. I'm going to say it could theoretically shut down Bitcoin, but then we're talking about, could it shut down cryptocurrency? No, I do not think it could shut down cryptocurrency because specifically when the government tries to go into a full-blown ban of it, if they do, all of the money is going to move into anonymous coins, meaning the government's not going to know who's sending these things. Because right now with Bitcoin, the police and the military and the government, they can use blockchain analysis to see where all your coins been. People that think they're hidden on Bitcoin, they're not. You're most likely on record, and you're most likely going to get some type of tax bill sometime. That's the truth. The government always gets their part. We know that historically they get their part either by you giving it up or by them killing you. So so can the government ban cryptocurrency? I don't think so. I think there are things that are set in motion that can't be stopped. That's my opinion.
All right, very good.
I can speak to that as well. As we saw with China, right? I mean, that's huge, right? Because they control like 83% of the mining, right?
That's exactly why the price cut in half, because just things went haywire. Everybody thought it was over.
Right. But the interesting thing was, despite all of that, despite the shutdown in China and all that, the price did dip, right? But then within like a month or two, it was back up higher than it was. And in fact, Bitcoin hit its highest price ever, 20,000, without any involvement with China. So if you took China completely out of the picture, and Bitcoin soared to its highest heights ever, right?
Yeah, these are just panic sell-offs, right?
So my point is, we've already have a use case here, right? To say, okay, a main government banned it, and what did it do? It not only kept going, right? Took a little dip, yeah, but then it came right back and stronger than ever. So the point is, and you can go to bitcoinobituaries.com and see how many times Bitcoin has died, right? And it's over 200 now. It's not going to die in that sense. The only way you could really stop Bitcoin is to shut the internet off, and they're not going to do that.
Exactly.
Because they use it too.
I want to bring up another point because it's something I just thought about. I don't know if you guys have heard with the Ross Ulbricht case. He was the guy that created the Silk Road, and when the government seized his Bitcoin, I forget if it was 1 million Bitcoin. I know he had like a net worth of like over 100 million, like he was super rich. But the government took the Bitcoin and was actually auctioning it off. Did you all hear about this?
Yes.
The government was having Bitcoin auctions and selling it off. So you really think the government wants to ban this? They want anything but. They want to control this, but they're going to try to ban it when they feel they can't control it. And China has like 1.3 billion people or something like that. It's hard to control 1 billion people, especially when you have Cantonese and Mandarin. You have two different dialects, and it's like Hong Kong, which is the biggest port in China, they speak Cantonese there. I always think about that. It's a little bit crazy if you think about that, but you know, most of China speaks Mandarin, but they got Cantonese in Hong Kong. So how the hell are you gonna get yourself involved with that? I think possibly what happened is the sell-offs are happening because you hear about the ban and you assume that, okay, the ban's going to happen, nobody's going to mine anymore. When in reality, I think a lot of people still kept mining. And I think to this day, a lot of people still keep mining. So people blew the problem out of proportion. Right. It looks like you said, it recovers time and time and time again. Whenever people were having a huge sell-off, I'm just laughing my ass off because I get to sit back and just hold on, and I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to bounce back.
Yeah, and every time there's a dip like that, hey, it's buying time, right? You know, a lot of people get depressed when the price drops. I'm like, yes, please drop.
Oh, yeah.
So I can buy more, right?
People are depressed, plus, like, you have Keynesian economists like Stiglitz and people and jokes like that come out and say, yeah, you know, Bitcoin needs to be banned. The reasons they give are preposterous. So, I mean, if there's anything that could convince you, Dan, just look at the exact people who are really raging against Bitcoin. It's our enemies, our pure, bitter enemies.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm not saying I'm raging against it, but I am raging against the time limit I have from my wife. So we're going to need to wind this one down. I hate to cut it short, but how about I give you each a minute to do a final summary and then give out your websites where people can find more information. I will, of course, list them down below on our show notes page, which will be at actualanarchy.com/crypto102. So let's go to Stephen, and then we will end with Kirk.
Yeah, so I think maybe every 6 months we can do this and just give like an update to see where we're all at. Maybe we'll all have gotten rich by it. Maybe Dan will have gotten rich by it. But we can maybe do an update every 6 months, and we'll call it Crypto 1.3, 1.4, whatever. So yeah, it was really fun doing this with you guys. I mean, these things really, really important to talk about in this climate. I'm sure you guys have heard the dollar is not doing too well. Gold's been doing not too bad, huh? I mean, I was surprised. I didn't think gold was going to make a comeback, but if the dollar is going down, gold's going to go up. That's historically true. So it's good talking to you guys, and it's nice meeting you, Kirk. We'll talk more. And yeah, thank you guys.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would just like to also thank you for having me on. Good to talk to you again, Steve. And just in closing, I would like to say that, you know, this is such an exciting time to be in, and I haven't been this excited about something for a very long time, because you know, you try all these different things, and there's always somebody coming in there like a middleman to squash it or kill it. And you talked about the Ross Ulbricht case, right? I actually got to meet his mom the other day. I went to a Bitcoin conference here in Dallas, Texas, and you know, she gave the whole presentation of what happened, how he was blackballed. There was also
his mom is a wonderful person.
Oh, she's amazing. She's amazing. And you know, and then they even had a speaker there from the SEC. And so I was going to ask this question. Somebody beat me to the punch, but you know, with a lot of these ICOs, you try to play ball with these people, right? Because they're coming in giving these real vague, you know, outlines of, well, this may or may not be a security, so we don't know if we can, you know, you have to register or whatever. And then you register, and then they say, well, you can't actually sell that here, or you got to sell to accredited investors, which if you look up the definition, you're basically a rich person, right? So a lot of these ICOs are having problems in the United States because of the SEC. So somebody asked a question, say, how can a Joe Schmo investor get involved in new and emerging economies and products like this when they just get essentially told that, no, you can't. because we're trying to protect you from yourself, right? And it's like, well, let me make that decision, right? I'm all about competing currencies, and yes, there are some scams out there for ICOs, but you know what? Let me make that decision, right? And somebody asked that question, and he really didn't have an answer. And then I just read today that they created this thing called SAFT, which is it's basically like an approach to try to get SEC compliant ICOs, right? And they tried this with the T0 ICO for Overstock.com, right? And there was a few others that were trying to launch on that platform, and they've now released a statement saying basically that they've actually sent subpoenas to Overstock.com for their ICO after they raised a bunch of money. And then I read an article today saying that the traditional SAFT ICO is dead. So once again, it's about big government coming in, claiming that they're working for you, trying to protect you, but then not affording you the opportunity to speculate and maybe have a nice return or maybe get rich or whatever. They essentially want to keep people poor. There's no other way to look at it. Absolutely no other way.
When protecting you at the point of a gun is not protecting you; it's threatening you. It's,
exactly.
The exact opposite.
And there are workarounds for these things, right? I mean, there are workarounds for these things, but to always be worried that is the SEC gonna send their goon squad and come knocking on my door because I want to invest $100 in some ICO that may or may not be a scam? I don't know. I do my own research. I pick and choose what I want to try to invest in. But they come in with a billy club and say, no, you can't. That's insane. That's ridiculous. And any government that is going to limit or, ban or whatever, they're slitting their own economic throats. Because guess what? You're going to have other countries pop up going, hey, bring your Bitcoin here. Bring your Ethereum here. Bring your whatever money here. We'll gladly allow you to do whatever you want. Like Estonia has come out and said, hey, you come over here, we'll set you up. There's no, taxation on crypto at all. There's certain countries all over the world that are going to step up and say, come here, right?
It's never going to end. It's never going to end. And I'll help wrap up here because I know Dan's wife is probably texting him like, what the hell are you doing? But I'll give you my links so you guys can find me. You can find me as the host. I host the Peace and Liberty podcast, which is starting March 5th, which is this Monday. You can pretty much just find me. It's pretty much / the Peace and Liberty podcast, whether it's Facebook or anything. So you can just find me that way. You can email me at scliberty@protonmail.com if you want to contact me, or just find me on Facebook, Stephen Clyde. So yeah, thanks so much for doing this, guys. And I guess Kirk, if you want to give us your website where we can find you.
Yeah, so you can check me out at cryptorum.com. And as Dan mentioned earlier, I did some writing for him a while back. And check me out on Twitter also. And, this is the revolution. So get on board. That's all I can say.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So
well said, gentlemen. Yeah, thank you guys so much for joining, and I'm going to play our Libertarian Union plug, and that will end the show. This will play for about a minute. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
In the early days of the Internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert Internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe Libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
everyone, please like, follow, donate, subscribe, and share. Any donations will be used to reach more people.